Hi everyone, welcome back. Thank you for being here. Europe is facing multiple crises at the same time. There's an economic downturn that is only going to worsen as the EU's main industrial sectors continue to weaken. We will focus on that in just a moment. Then there is increasing political dysfunction as French and German governments grow more unstable and their leaders are clearly unpopular and are just hanging on by a thread to their seats. The third type of crisis that we're witnessing in the EU is clearly a social one, social discontent, and one of the reasons for that is the influx of migrants from destabilized countries that require substantial resources and support, while at the same time crime levels increase, and that leads to further instability within the EU. Lastly, Western governments' silence and support when it comes to the ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and in the Middle East clearly show that international law and any moral appeal that the West once appeared to have, those things are long gone. For example, take Gaza, Syria, Ukraine. That list is growing by the day. Nevertheless, it is uncommon to see an honest discussion about the true state of affairs in the EU. Nobody is talking about it. These are unpopular topics, of course, as the majority of those people who you come across here in the United States, for example, would do anything. They would literally do anything to convince you that Europe is doing very well, and it is in fact Russia and China that are on the verge of collapsing and maybe even disappearing off the maps completely. Trust me, I've had many of these conversations in the past couple of months, and it just points to a complete lack of available, honest, and factual information. So let's start with Germany. The truth is, Germany's economic troubles are not limited only to Germany, but they have a significant and a profound impact on the EU due to a very simple fact. Germany is Europe's biggest economy, and its manufacturing capabilities have been the backbone of Europe's economic strength. In 2024, major German employers, including such brands as Bosch, ThyssenKrupp, and Siemens, have announced plans to lay off tens of thousands of workers because their profits have been declining and they need to cut costs. Typically, labor costs are the first ones on the list. This is why layoffs and closures are to be expected when businesses are not making profits. In addition to layoffs and factory closures announced by Volkswagen earlier this year, which I discussed in great detail previously here on my channel, in November, German company Bosch said it planned to lay off 7,000 employees as the company warned of a, quote, difficult economic situation, end of quote. The same month, in November, the engineering and steel-producing group ThyssenKrupp said it would lay off 11,000 steel workers, representing 40%, just think about that, 40% of workers in that division. Another famous German company, truck maker Daimler, said in August that it would introduce a job freeze, and in addition to that, it would also reduce employees' working hours, mainly affecting its German plants. Now, let's switch to France. France is not doing much better than Germany. The same month, in November, several France-based companies announced layoffs. Le Monde here reports that Michelin plans to close 2 plants in France. In November as well, that was clearly a very, very bad month for the EU. Steelworkers in northern France went on a strike over rumors of factory closures that would affect thousands of workers. So to sum it up, the EU is not on a path towards economic prosperity, as we keep hearing in the mainstream media here in the United States. It is actually quite the opposite. Economic struggles combined with political dysfunction are likely signs that the garden might in fact be transforming into a jungle. But you don't have to believe my words. The political chaos and economic stagnation in Europe has been discussed in great detail by Mario Draghi, the former European Central Bank president and Italian prime minister. In his address to the EU Parliament, he said, "World trade is slowing, geopolitics is fracturing, and technological change is accelerating. It is a world where long-established business models are being challenged and where some key economic dependencies are suddenly turned into geopolitical vulnerabilities." Of all the major economies, Europe is the most exposed to these shifts. We are the most open. Our trade to GDP ratio exceeds 50% compared with 37% in China and only 27% in the United States. We are the most dependent. We rely on a handful of suppliers for critical raw materials and import over 80% of our digital technology. We have the highest energy prices. EU companies face electricity prices that are 2 to 3 times higher than those in the United States and in China. He then went on to point out the obvious. We are lagging behind severely, he says, in new technologies. Only 4 of the world's top 50 tech companies are European, and we are the least ready to defend ourselves. Only 10 member states spend more than or equal to 2% of GDP on defense, in line with NATO commitments. In this setting, we're all anxious about the future of Europe. Mr. Draghi then concluded, "The European Union exists to ensure that Europe's fundamental values are always upheld," he says. Democracy, freedom, peace, equity, and prosperity in a sustainable environment. If Europe cannot any longer deliver these values for its people, attention, it will have lost its reason for being. So, as you can see, even within the EU, there are people who are thinking independently, who are thinking very, very clearly, and who are speaking out against current policies that have put their countries on a quiet, destructive path where economic sovereignty and political sovereignty are at stake. Now, one of the comments that I appreciate in Mario Draghi's report is, of course, his openness about what needs to change. He also points out the path forward and the things that need to change, that need to be addressed if the EU wants to exist. The number one thing that he underscored here is, and those of you who have been watching my videos for a while would know this very well, he said, Europe needs to prioritize securing lower energy prices. It all goes back to Europe sanctioning itself into oblivion, where sanctions on Russia did backfire and they are backfiring, and that lack of resources at an acceptable price point increased the cost of virtually everything else within the EU and drove its demise. With that said, what are your best predictions about the EU's future? Will the EU reverse its course, or is its collapse inevitable? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. As always, I would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and I will see you back here tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day.